11:08. Okay, now, as we mentioned at the start of the meeting regarding the agenda, we may have, we were thinking we might have had a late agenda item, but as I understand it, we've gotten notification about an extension.
Yes, so I've got an email from MFE indicating they're happy to extend the timeframes to a 27th of February meeting, but would like to hear as soon after that as possible.
Right, okay. So just wanted to clear that up. Something will come through.
Council.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay, so group of activities. Neville.
Kia ora, councillors. So our directorate, or this Customer Community and Services, GOA, is a combination of some of the services that are provided from the directorate that I lead, as well as from Finance and Business Services. So the key elements in there that you will be interested in potentially are around the upcoming triennial elections, and that budget is provided for that purpose. Speak on Janine's behalf in respect to the commencement for the next LTP, which is still a couple of years, well, a couple of years away, but provision is already in place for that, and also for the Regional Emergency Services Fund. So I guess in terms of the report itself, the main items are on. I'm going to try and find the page now.
Page 16?
Page 16 of the agenda. Probably not really open to discussion on these topics. There is a business case coming later in the day that, or tomorrow, whenever we get to that, which is
later today. Let's be
later
optimistic,
today. I'll be
okay?
positive. Later today, after lunch, that we'll be discussing and considering. The rest of the information that's in front of you is relatively unchanged from the LTP and is pretty standard stuff, to be honest, but happy to take any questions and discussion. We move on to the more complex problems of the day.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yes, thank you. I just had a quick question to remind me, on page 16, community support was 3.4 million. It dropped to 1.2 million this annual plan, which is what we agreed to in the long-term plan. What was that for? What was that reduction?
I'll pass it over to Janine. That's one of her budgets she manages.
So that line has included the Regional Development Fund historically. So obviously that peters out in terms of any contributions through there.
Right. Thought there might have been a sudden $2 million budget.
No. Sadly not.
All right. Any other questions? Nope. All good.
So just on behalf of the group and Civil Defence, the budget here recognises that there's no increase signalled in the LTP. However, an additional expenditure of about 19,500 is required to meet the costs of the increases associated with the service level agreements with Hamilton City Council, Hauraki and Matamata Piako. Now, that's sorry. South Waikato is also in this mix. Now there are changes proposed that will potentially be coming through in respect to Hamilton, or primarily Matamata Piako and Hauraki District, in that those SLAs are proposed to cease from the 1st July. So some of these costs are signalled, but and anticipated, but may not be necessarily coming through. There are no further changes proposed to this budget outside of what was provided for in the LTP. There were a number of new roles that came through that you'll recall that we agreed to fund, and those have all been now put in place, and we are not expecting any more increases to be coming through. There have, in reference to the SLAs, there were increased costs that that have been identified around the overhead charges on those SLAs. We're still finalising those at the moment, but the view is that our goal is to try and transfer the SLAs over to memorandums of understanding, which reduce some of those overhead charges should that arrangement be agreed. We'll keep you updated on those changes should they come about.
Councillor Smith.
In page 18, it's 58, it says these increased costs should be met through cost recoveries. I'd like to see the word shall, but I think you just indicated that they may fall over anyway.
Yeah.
So why aren't we using the word shall be recovered?
Well, that is the intention. So, yeah. Shall sounds like a reasonable choice of word. And like you said, our goal is to try and cease those SLAs from the 1st of July when they expire. Well, we're operating on expired SLAs for those two councils at the moment. We're in discussions with them about transferring them to memorandums of understanding, which won't carry that same cost factor or risk for WRC.
No other questions? Next
Yep.
section.
Kia tatou.
Kia ora.
So regional hazards and emergency response. No plan changes. So this covers both our community resilience program, reaching out and working with different district councils and community groups on adaptation projects, as well as several emergency management functions outside of civil defence, such as flood response and marine oil spills. As you can see there, no plan changes to the budget in terms of the long-term plan, nor variation to the long-term plan. Happy to pause there, Madam Chair.
This category often has fallen behind on some of the work programs. You're still comfortable that they'll be met?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions in relation? Councillor Marr?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Greg, just with relation to the environmental consents, and we've raised this before, but talking about actually getting them into an asset class.
Mm.
Have we gone any further down?
So
Capitalising them?
through Madam Chair, that we'll bring that up in the next
section.
next activity.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else in regard to the regional hazards and emergency response? No? Okay, next section.
Right. So flood protection and control work. So a large significant group of activities for council covering flood protection, river management, and land drainage. As you can see in the document provided on page 20, there are a couple of adjustments coming through the budgets that were planned in the long-term plan, particularly around reducing expenditure for various things that aren't required for this particular financial year, along with a planned increase in the service level agreement for Hamilton City Council. In addition to that, you'll note from paragraph 65 onwards that there are some adjustments to the annual plan that have been signalled that are in the right direction in terms of budget. So certainly some savings that have been identified across a couple of areas. Now the environmental consents are covered within this particular group of activities because they are river management. So happy to take questions in that regard. It's something that we dived into before Christmas. With regard to the treatment of consents as assets, I suppose it's depreciating, so no further progress has been made. I mean, our current asset management policy specifically excludes the treatment of resource consents in that way. In saying that, the proposal is to utilise reserve funding to cover the costs of those, so of this particular process. So it is, I guess, in essence, spreading the cost of these consents over a wider time period as opposed to a particular financial year.
That, if I may,
Mm.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for that, Greg. I would like to see that work on those consents progress, and if it needs to come through Stratton Pole or whatever, however that sits, but the sooner the better, please. My other concern is, do we have a base limit for reserves? Just understanding that as this goes through, it's virtually going to strip out all the money in that Coromandel Reserve Fund.
So it won't strip out all the money. There'll still be a residual amount left. For our operational zone operational funds, there's no agreed ceiling or limit that we use. There was a previous agreement with drainage reserves, which I think was 50% of the operational budget. But that is a discussion that I'll be looking to progress through ICMC about whether there is a practical level that we need to aim for. Those particular zone reserves.
Yeah, just bearing in mind, obviously, that as opportunities come out, if there's no reserves, there's no way to action them. And then obviously we've seen the storm events and that sort of thing that have put real pressure in my area as such, but other areas as well. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Really to see something done in that space.
Greg, can you, I don't know if you can recall, but I had in my mind there might have been something like a $2 million reserve in the Coromandel, and this is only taking about a third of that.
Yeah, there is at the moment, although I think around 800 to 900,000 of that is in regard to the flood protection schemes, so it's being set aside as capital reserve. The remainder, I think the residual was in the order of 200 to 300,000. But look, it is a trade-off because we do hold reserves for, I guess, rainy days from an operational point of view. But they aren't the only reserves that we hold. We have zone reserves and the regional disaster reserve as well, should we have those events occur. But again, it's a trade-off between what might happen in the future versus a very pressing need for the zone right now.
I was just probably going to draw a parallel between that and the prior year surplus conversation that we've just had. It's just around targeted rates. So, you know, the prior year surplus is effectively almost like a general rate reserve and the ability for you to have some flexibility around that. So, the ability, the need to hold a little bit of ballast in there for the unexpected, but also being clear on why you're actually holding any reserve balance.
Sorry, I must have, maybe I've been privy to some other conversations, but what you're proposing, did I hear this correctly, you're proposing to use reserves to help fund consenting costs for operational stuff?
Correct.
So, don't get me wrong, that consenting stuff needs to be funded, but that doesn't seem to me like the role of a reserve, because at some point, the reserve's going to run out, and overcharging to create reserves to then pay for consenting costs. I'm struggling with the logic there.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a situation that the zone has found itself in where, for various reasons across the different activities, it has built up a reserve slowly over time.
So I'm fine if you're just using it to get us back on the straight and narrow, but I was hearing it sounding like a long-term management strategy is what I was kind of hearing. But did I not hear that right?
So we do have a number of other consents that will come up from time to time.
Yeah.
What I'm expecting from my budget managers that we are planning for those. And part of that, and part of the way that the reserves are used sometimes is to slowly accumulate funds for those large expenditures that come up from periodic and come up from time to time. So another example is our scheme reviews. Where we do hold relatively consistent income for zones, but maybe every 10 years we have a large expenditure item, which is to undertake a scheme review.
I mean, if I could just help with that, Councillor Kneebone, my view is that there is quite a substantial amount of money has built up, not some of which is not targeted for any particular purpose, and it just seems silly to rate the same group of people again for consents when we've already got money that we've already taken that we haven't been able to spend.
Look, no, I agree with that, and look, the targeted rates, but or majority. But I do think if I hark back to the days we had 8 zone committees, we used to watch those reserves quite regularly, and I don't think we're doing that in ICM as well as, and it's not just this year. It's last term as well. We need just a very simple graph that just shows where that reserve is. We need to be seeing those quite regularly to stop them building up. But for the wrong reasons, because it's no different to the concept that Hughes was talking about before. You're just taking more money than you need, which is a little bit illogical if there's use for it. So no, I'm happy with where you're heading as long as it's to sort out a short-term problem. It shouldn't be a long-term solution.
And through you, Madam Chair, there will be an item coming to the Integrated Catchment Management Committee to discuss reserve use, because each reserve is different, gets held for different reasons, as well as operational rainy days. So there'll be a more fulsome discussion for the committee coming up.
Councillor Nicol.
Yeah, the service level agreement with Hamilton City Council, I understand that's been overdue to review, and I understand the level of service of us working together and just improving. It's been improving. What is the 50,000 for in that process?
So it's an increase in the direct costs that are made available to Hamilton City Council to undertake river works. And it reflects both an increase in the ability to deliver, or the cost to deliver those works, as well as a general desire to increase the amount of work that happens within Hamilton City.
That
under
sounds
Project
aligned
Watershed.
to those intentions. Thank you.
Councillor Cookson.
Just going back to the discussion before with Coromandel, I agree with the discussion that Warren and Stu just brought up, that because this is an area that's definitely has been infected a lot over the last 4 years with weather resilience, it feels a bit uncomfortable drawing that fund down so low. And I just would like to have that discussion a bit further of making sure the reserve doesn't get too low. I think that's all Warren's it's trying to say is, well, we want to have comfort that where that reserve and what other funding options there are to fill that gap so that reserve does not get too low. And I think that's all Stewie's saying. I think we all sort of agree with that. And all Warren's worried about is that reserve is too low if things go bad again like the last 2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's all Warren's trying to put, and I agree with that. I think most councillors would. So it's just, we're trying to find a happy place, Greg. That's all, that we all feel comfortable. I don't think we're that much in it. We understand where you're trying to get to, but we want to make sure that reserve is in a safe place for the future. Yeah, thank you.
And if I could just reiterate, so this is the operational reserve that we're talking about for the zone. There are separate reserves held for the zone for disaster recovery for a certain scale of events. There is also a regional disaster reserve zone. And those are protected from this. These are used for specific purposes, including the 2023 floods, so not for this particular reason.
All I mean is I want you to come back to us to give us comfort that lowering that reserve down to whatever number, we feel comfortable that we're not doing any disservice to the Coromandel. That's all I want you to, that's all. Is that fair?
What I'm hearing from you though is that at a future ICMC meeting, there's going to be a discussion around these reserves, right? So that's probably the best place for us to achieve that level of comfort that the approach we're taking is a sound one.
Madam Chair, just through you, just to be clear though, in the budgets, it is assumed this money is coming out for the consents. If there's if there was through a committee discussion not to, that will put money elsewhere. There'll need to be new rate struck to be able to get that money.
But adding to that conversation, we need to know what the community is wanting, rather than just sitting around in here telling our ratepayers what's good for them. I don't want to see that happen. I just want to know what the community wants us to do on their behalf. If they're prepared to pay more, that's fine. If they want us to use the reserves and take it down and run the risk of having higher rate increases to respond, that's fine. But I do want to know what the community who is rated for that wants us to do.
I suppose that's the downside of only having subcommittees in Lower Waikato and Waihau Piako, isn't it? Is what is our mechanism for communities like the Coromandel community or the West Coast community.
We can be more
or-
nimble. We
Sorry?
we can be more nimble if we wish to.
Mm. Councillor Marr?
Yeah, just briefly going back to it, I know it's the operational budget and again, just concerned about cleaning out that reserve. And I don't believe it is as high as you sort of just stated then, but also making sure that we're not lowering levels of service because of that, because it is operational budget. And quickly, point 67, royalties. Where's their royalty income?
So there is sand extracted on the Waikato River with
Yeah.
windstones, and so we have an agreement in place.
So
to be
that's
paid
the only
royalties.
item?
Yes.
Yeah. I've got plenty of sand in my region I'd like to get out.
Jennifer?
Just to follow up on Noel's point and the others that have been made, that's the point of this draft budget. I mean, we can promote to people in the Coromandel to submit on this very topic to us. It's not a consultation question, but should it be brought to their attention, they can still provide under the other column that they like this one way or the other, can't they?
We would need to include some discussion in the consultation document to inform that feedback.
Right.
Um,
Rather than relying on a couple Facebook groups. Yeah, sure.
Yes, yeah.
I just wanted to point it out. The point of the draft is that you can get some of this feedback still. If there are no, I think we should have other mechanisms for sure. But that's an ICMC issue.
Nice. Hey, before we move off of this topic, sorry? Councillor Hughes, did you want to have?
Just a quick follow-up to the comments on sand. That I happen to know there's an awful lot of good quarry metal comes out of a certain boat ramp that side, which I don't know why it's not sold. Revenue's there for the taking. So
Nice. So before we move off of this group of activities, just, sorry,
I did have one other.
Oh, you
item
have
in
one
this
more.
Group of activities as well, so.
one, okay.
Just
Do
to
you want to go through
briefly
that?
highlight this, the Wharekawa Coast River and
yes.
Catchment Management. And I think we are going to be delving into that in more detail, or we.
Yeah, it's a
open to that
separate
now?
item.
Yeah,
And thank you. It's a really good report.
just us, my colleague, are we planning on
It's in
covering
the
that detail now?
Yeah, if we go through another couple of slides, it's in the presentation.
So we can dive into the detail as part of this topic now.
Okay.
I just know I've got, I think Adam Munro's online. I'll just ask Adam to come down to the room. He's hearing.
While he's making his way down to the room, I just wanted to signal that I'm keen to put forward a motion around investigating the establishment of some R&D funds in association with our flood protection and our control work. As I'm sure councillors have heard on a number of occasions, the affordability of our schemes is constantly challenging, and in the face of community resilience and climate action, I think that it would behoove this council, given our reliance on our flood protection and control works for the productive outcomes for our community, that we identify funds that we would be willing to utilize to investigate new ways of doing things, new innovative and efficient ways of doing things other than just the status quo. We all know that diesel flood pumps that might have negative impacts on some of our biodiversity are probably not the way of the future. And even if they were, they're becoming increasingly unaffordable. So I am keen to put forward a motion. Democracy, Dave. There we go. That the council directs staff to investigate a provision for R&D within flood protection and control works activities that promotes innovation to improve performance and/or cost savings and brings back those results for consideration in the 25-26 annual plan. This just gives some scope for staff to identify how we might best quantify and apply this type of funding. Counselor Nickel, and then I've got Counselor Cookson, Counselor,
You're in a blind spot.
I've got Counselor Nickel and then Counselor Cookson. Counselor Nickel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a question on this around, because we do have research that we contribute to or do quite a lot of the time. Like, for example, the PEAT project is a project, like a business case we funded. Are you envisaging a project coming out of that's quite specific, or a more of a general fund that would be ongoing? It's more of a one-off for now?
This
not
is,
sure yet, just-
I'm not sure, and
Okay.
that's why I'm keeping this fairly open as to what this might look like. But it's more just a signal that there's been a number of conversations in our communities about different technology that we might look to utilize. And I want to make sure that there's provision that allows us to perhaps test some new and innovative ideas, a bit like we have done bits of this in the past, like with the McEwens,
Fish friendly stuff.
the alteration
projects.
to the, I don't know if that's the right word, alteration to the McEwens that made it fish friendly. I think that for us to meet the needs of our community in an ongoing nature, we're going to have to continue to invest in research to enable us to meet the future challenges that
Oh,
come
totally.
from climate change, et cetera. So just
Totally
wanted
agree.
to-
And I think New Zealand underinvests in R&D in particular, but I'd be supportive of that, but keeping, just a note to say, obviously this is of interest to the wider regional sector as well. So as long as these things are, shared, and whether it's cost
Absolutely.
share or benefit share, that'd
Yeah.
be great. All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, and it is one of those things where if this council is willing to make a commitment, then it's a lot easier to get commitments out of others. Councillor Cookson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to second this. And I think it just allows staff to investigate where new projects or capabilities are able to be looked at. And if it's fit for purpose, I think that's all we're wanting to do is if there's a new sort of pump or a new sort of whatever, is it capable of working in that tidal zone, or is it where are we going to get the benefit of where this is this new technology? And that's not either, like we're then talking about how we monitor pumps and all sorts of things that we can turn them on for weather events and stuff like that. I know that's already in there, but there's a whole lot of, this just gives some scope to staff to really dig deep and say, what can we do better and have better, it's also about better biodiversity outcomes, better community outcomes, iwi and mana whenua outcomes. We're going to fish friendly options, and there's a whole lot of things that staff can just have big blue sky thinking about it. I suppose that's a better way of thinking about it, that put everything on the table and see what drops out. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, not just be focused on the status quo, but what can we do differently and what can we encourage in terms of partners that we might choose to engage with. All right, I've got Councillor Hughes, and then I've got Councillor Smith.
Well, I think number 5 comes up on the screen before anyone else. Sorry, cancelled mine out, so.
All right, I was working off the list I've
I
got,
appreciate that.
but so Councillor Hughes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to suggest we be more specific. This, if I understand correctly, is relating to the siphon, and I absolutely, totally support the putting some money aside to investigate the suitability, the use of siphons in our flood protection assets. I'd like to have it capped in terms of how much we're going to be committing. I do not want an open-ended checkbook for R&D in any shape or form. And if it is in fact for the benefit of the catchments, then I think that should be part of a targeted rate.
The intention and just to clarify, the intention and the wording of this is to signal an ongoing desire to encourage us to look at new ways of doing things. And in terms of the capping, this motion is just directing staff to investigate a provision. And so the decision of the quantum of that provision will come back to this council through the CE's submission, I would think, because we're asking it to be reflected in the annual plan. So that quantum would be debated at another time.
Saying. To the signal now. Should be.
Got it. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Going back to my earlier point, these are the type of situations where I believe prior year surplus funds should be utilised initially to establish what we're trying to do. And if it is the right thing to continue to do, then we'll move to a targeted rate or doing something else. Otherwise, there may not be an ability to get it off the ground in the first place. So just ask you to think about that. I also think, Councillor Cookson, you were going to second this, and if not, I'm happy to do it. But yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't have well, in fact, I encourage us to be outside the square because I think at times we're too fixed. Same old, same old. So if there are more efficient, more economic, modern ways to do things, then we need to be moving in that direction as soon as possible. So, yeah, I would support this. Absolutely need to know what sort of figures we're talking about. And I also agree, not an open checkbook, but we do need to start looking at alternative options. Thank you.
Councillor Kneebone.
Sorry, really supportive of this, but I was envisaging perhaps, as Noel said, a bit of surplus to give will provide for, I don't know, a quarter of an FTE or whatever it needs over the next 12 months to scope this, because I think you need to go and scope it with other councils as well and other potential funders with a view to the next annual plan actually starting the blooming thing off, what it looks like. Because I would have thought it was pretty tricky to try and get a list sorted between now and June. but given if we can't take all the other councils, we're going to try and take all the other councils around the country with us. But anyway, I'm just curious to what Chris is supposed to be coming back with. June, yeah.
So it's to investigate a provision for R&D within flood protection and control work. So what I would assume it might look like would be, okay, if we were going to provide for that, recommendation is that it's from the prior year surplus this time. I don't know what it's going to look like.
But we need to go out. We need to go out with something if we're to get it into the 25-26 annual plan, don't we? Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I can help on that, I don't think the quantum of funding that council would be looking to put or direct here would be significant enough that it's something that we need to consult on. But that's what I guess the resolution's intended, is that we actually have a look at that and size it. So how much funded, in what way, and what are the guardrails that might be in place in terms of when we do or don't do R&D. But the intention is to promote that innovation and looking at how we do things differently.
All right, I've got a motion. We've got a mover and a seconder. Any other comment? Oh, sorry. Councillor Clarkson, over to you.
That's all right. Yeah, so look, I'm just viewing this as a form at the moment of a redirecting of staff time. And I would be interested to know how long, at least some indication from staff now about how long because what you're talking about is a form of a research scan. It's a scan of what are the new technologies or techniques or whatever, which might be able to make transformational shifts in the way we operate in a particular space. That's sort of what I'm hearing. Of course, at the moment, you can't predict what we're going to be told, but I'm expecting this will lead to a proposal for funding, an R&D fund of some style, which will allow people to focus with either new staff time or an external contractor or whatever it might be. But at the moment, we don't know the shape of it. So I'm in support of a scoping exercise, which involves redirecting staff time. I would like to know a bit about how long you think this might take to do this little piece of work. But yeah, I'll support it on that basis.
I'll just try and make a useful comment here again, because we don't actually quite know what the outcome might look like. But I think the intent of it is, given our past experience with the likes of the fish-friendly pumps that was mentioned, with the likes of, something that's on the table at the moment. At the last field days, we were taking to look at a siphon system, and I think there's one or two potential other things out there, is to kind of say, staff are scanning those things as part of what they do. But I guess it's when an opportunity comes up, are we agile enough to be able to act on it? And what's in my head, and I'd probably need to maybe talk with Greg and Janine over the break, or something, is about what would need to do to be able to do that over the next month or two. I was actually thinking something a little bit simpler when it was first mentioned to me this morning, but there is a potential opportunity that, if we said, it would be useful to hold a little fund for when we do find something, to be able to work with other councils, to be able to work with central government, whatever, to see if we could work it up. I haven't really got any more thought about how it would work than that. I think we just need to do that piece of work first.
Yeah, and I think the key word there is agility, because these things do come up. Sometimes they emerge really quickly, and sometimes we need to respond really quickly, including opportunities to partner with other organisations to support this. So I think that's what this isn't a particularly complex, task to take away, but it's more actually confirming how we might do this in a more consistent manner as a council.
And just reiterating what Janine was saying, I don't think that we're envisioning significant funds associated with this. It's just signaling this council's desire to, I suppose, identify ways we can do things differently. As Councillor Smith was saying, it's not just the status quo. It's what can we innovate, and what innovation can we encourage within our specialist areas that are helping support our communities. Councillor Cookson.
Ben was actually first, sorry, Madam Chair. I was, I thought he was.
How about the master list here?
Okay.
Democracy Day.
I just wanted to add to that is our rationalisation asset down in Piparawa, the success of that, staff have actually gone out there to assess and our contractors of where things like that could be better used in all flood tidal areas. So really this is just putting another lens on that. So they're already doing that work, but what else could work good in that spot so we're getting the best outcomes possible. So I think you're right, Bruce, we are already doing this. It's just putting the right lens on it. That's all we're asking for. We're not actually after any big budget. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, just a question. If we're setting up an R&D fund, does that also then apply to transport or possum control? Or, are we setting up a new mechanism here similar to our economic development fund? We're starting down a path, that's all.
All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. Okay, were there some other
Yes.
areas
yeah.
you wanted to cover off in
Yeah,
this?
a particularly substantive item for this annual plan, which is our Wharekawa River and Catchment program. So just to remind councillors, I think we've talked about this a few times over the past few months. As part of this annual plan, we will be proposing the introduction of a new river and catchment rate for the Wharekawa area, which is on the west of the Firth of Thames. I'm joined by Adam Munro, who's worked in great detail on this project over the last few probably years now to get to this point. I guess the main change for council is that there was a request to bring forward this consultation to this annual plan so we can crack on in the 25-26 annual plan. So I've got a few slides to run through, but we'll go through them really briefly, really quickly, because I know that you've already had quite a substantive discussion as a council around this particular topic, just to remind you exactly what we're proposing here and what the consultation proposal will look like for that community. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Greg, and thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. Yeah, this is a milestone moment for this project. I just want to acknowledge the project team that sits behind me here. It's been quite a long time in the making, and so it's really a privilege to come and present to you this proposed new rate for a community that's been crying out for this work. Also want to acknowledge, I guess, the support of Hauraki District Council and Waikato District Council along the way as well. It's through the Wharekawa project has been, I guess, it's part of that adaptive planning process, which is similar to SIDIF and similar to some of the other projects that are underway as well. So it's been a really good process. Just go to the next slide, please, Dave. So the purpose of the report today is to, as Greg said, propose a new river and catchment non-capital target rate as part of the 25-26 annual plan consultation process. And if you just go through again, Dave. A bit of the background to this, you'll all be familiar with this. The Wharekawa Kaiaua area is pretty much the only remaining area where it is not covered by a targeted rate for river and catchment work. And so it was stemmed from the Auckland Super City formation around 2010. Many of you remember that the Kaiaua Wharekawa area was part of the Franklin District Council, and it was transferred over to the Hauraki District Council as part of that process. We obviously had a couple of flood events that occurred, particularly the one in 2017, which caused a lot of angst with the community. From that, we've worked with Hauraki District Council, who led the project to establish the Wharekawa 2120 project. And so, long story short, we're now at the point now we're going through pre-engagement with the community through the community panel process, which was community driven. We're now in I guess, at a stage where we can present to you a proposed targeted rate. And that's the idea for this report. So just go to the next slide, please, Dave. So just remind ourselves what area we're talking about. So the image to the left is the proposed targeted rate collection area from Waitakere to the south up to just north of Whakatiwai to the north. And the image to your right is just the area of the Waihao-Piako current zone. And so with which I call the panhandle of the Wharekawa coast coming just to the top left-hand side. So remembering that the Wharekawa coast to date doesn't form part of the Waihao-Piako zone, but we have supported that area through an administration support, I guess through our information and advice, which has been funded through the regional rate to date. So just go through the next slide, please, Dave. So just a couple of shots of some of the events that we've, particularly the community. There are many more, but these was the most recent. Obviously flooding, a lot of catchment instability with the slips and erosion up in the upper catchment. So this is the sort of type of work that the new rate will help us manage on a more, I guess, consistent and intentional manner. At the moment, it's been largely ad hoc. We've had to rely on Hauraki District Council to provide some money. And remembering that this river and catchment work is proposed is fairly routine for us. It's what we do well. And it's our core service, and we believe the Regional Council is best suited to take on board this new activity. Next slide, please, Dave. The type of activities proposed, as I said, we're not talking flood protection, we're not talking stop banks, floodgates, flood pumps, we're talking river management, so essentially to ensure that the rivers are more stable, they stay within their banks, doing routine river management work, giving removal of obstructions, maintaining vegetation, and I guess controlling erosion, and which will obviously have improved biodiversity. The same for the upper catchment, looking at what we do, particularly around all the other zones, particularly like around Coromandel and Taupo, West Coast, for example, where we do a lot of upper catchment riparian planting, stabilising the land, and working with landowners on a partnership basis to ensure that we have improved catchments over time. And also some works planned, lower key works on the CMA, the coastal marine area, where we're going to obviously provide a little bit of offsetting around associated with some of the stream mouths, which can block and cause some flooding issues at the, I guess, down at the lower end. So we'll just move through the next slide, please, Dave. Just some examples of the river works that we do before and after. So the screenshot to the left just shows you some bank erosion, a fence becoming undermined, and then the post work doing some layering. So we do some natural layering now using poplars, willows, or other locally sourced vegetation, which removes the need for some of the hard structures. But in some cases, we do use localised rock protection just to ensure that we provide stability to the banks. Next slide, please, Dave. And again, obstructions. So this is quite common in the Wharekawa area and certainly common across the Waihaupēako, where we get a lot of trees that fall over, and we have to obviously go through and remove. And at the moment, we don't have any capacity to do any physical work in that Wharekawa catchment. So again, it's just a natural extension of the work that we do across the Waihaupēako zone. Thanks, Dave. Next slide, please. And again, just some examples of catchment works. You would have all seen these already, but just remind ourselves what catchment works are all about and what benefits they provide. So, as the planting and retirement of the river margins take effect, we can see some improved water quality and also some bank stability as well, which obviously has a lot of wider biodiversity benefits, supporting some of our other objectives. And just some examples of CMA works that we've done around the Coromandel that the new rate could potentially fund as well around the coastline with some coastal wetland enhancement. Thanks, Dave. We'll just rip through into some more of the. So again, I won't read this slide word for word, but yeah, we operate under a number of statutes and regulatory backgrounds, and so the new rate has been put through that process, and so we've made sure that we have met all the criteria that's proposed, and so ensure that we have gone down the due diligence route to propose the new rate for you today. Just go to the next slide. We've also used other funding examples, obviously around the region. We've got a number of examples, Piako, Waiho, Coromandel, West Coast Watershed, Project Watershed. And so we've come to the funding proposal today, the 70-30. So the 70 of targeted rate, 30% general rate has been based on our funding policies across the zone. And we believe where it's landed is a reasonable position based on that. And just go through the next slide, Dave. So this is the options that we're proposing to you today for consultation to the community. We're looking option of a single tier rate, so that could be a universal rate applied across the, I think there's 1,060 ratepayers across the proposed area. Our preferred option is the one in the middle with the 70-30 tier 2 rate, which recognises that there is some upper and lower benefit between the upper hill country and the lower river areas, where obviously the flooding impacts tend to occur more, and you've got the tidal zone, whereas in the upper catchment there's a lot less landowners as well, and the status of the catchments doesn't seem to be as bad as in the lower. And we've history has shown us that the lower reaches are the ones that tend to suffer the most impact. So we're looking at a low line flat rate that is sort of recognises that, and then an upper catchment rate where the benefits are less to compensate for that. Happy to take any questions on that slide, Madam Chair, because that's quite an important, unless we're going to keep moving through. Okay. Yep.
Have we got questions on that slide?
Yeah, yes.
Sorry, Jen, did you
No.
have a question on that
No,
slide? Or
go first, no?
Okay. Councillor Smith.
Thank
Go
you.
second.
70-30, can you go back to, right, so it talks about the indirect benefit area, that's your 30%, and you've got 70% there from direct benefits, and then you're talking about 30% general rate. So can you just, because we were talking this morning, and the way I read this, the 70-30 was split with the targeted rate, but then the general rate seems to be another component. So the 70-30 is actually from the 70% split. So it's not clear in the presentation and material. And so
you know the answer.
Essentially you've got 30% and the next 70% is actually 70-30 within that, is what you're saying. Well, can I just say
Let's get Janine to just
that wasn't very clear,
So-
but I'm happy to say,
No.
accept that that's what you're trying to say. It's just that we can say it better in my view.
Yes,
Thank you.
so there are two applications of 70-30, you're right. So there is the overall funding policy, which is saying 70% targeted, 30% general rate. And then within the 70% targeted, the direct benefit properties are paying 70% of the 70%. Yep.
Madam Chairman, that didn't come across through reading the papers.
Yeah, thanks, Janine. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, no, thanks for clarifying that, because I noticed in the report that the title of the table also had 70-30, 70-30. Yeah, so it's been made clear through the presentation. And my question was, we've had a discussion about when, because if we look at the table of the various zones and all the different targeted rate contributions, when is that review of all of that likely to happen? Because obviously we're setting something for now, but then we're also signalling we're going to review them all anyway.
Yes, so
What's the timing look like?
yeah, so council signed off through the LTP on a 2-year business case, which was to look at some of the fundamentals of the funding.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a review in terms of what others are doing, economic drivers and all of that, with the intention of the findings out of that work to come in and start to inform the next LTP. Having said that, unwinding our existing funding policies in this space is not a quick job. So we haven't, it's sort of doing this first funding of critical infrastructure and thinking about some of the who should pay, what does the work that we do now look like, and for whose benefit are we doing that? And then from there, it would be a review of all of those funding policies.
Okay.
So quite a staged process.
But it's likely to be next LTP, or maybe for the year after.
Next stage going into the next LTP.
Okay,
Yeah.
so with this, we're looking at 2, maybe 3 years of whatever this might land on, and then just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. I've got more comments later.
I've got Councillor Graf online, and then Councillor Dunbar-Smith. Councillor Graf?
Yes, thank you. Just some years back, we got the funding through for Graham's Creek on the Coromandel. Was the Graham Creek funding model 30% general rate and then 30-70 beyond that?
So through you, Madam Chair, I don't recall, so that I'm assuming referring to the Graham's Creek Flood Protection Scheme.
Yes, that's correct.
There was certainly a mixture of general and targeted, but I don't recall the ratio.
I'd just be curious at the ratio, Greg, if you could just pass it on to me.
Yeah, no problem.
Here
No
is-
problem. I would
thanks.
note that it is a different type of work. So Graham's Creek is
Okay.
very much in the flood protection space,
Okay.
as opposed to this work being river and catchment management.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, just to say that I also was confused in reading this report, and because we went to the meeting, and it's important for the people there that this goes through, or they get asked about this, because then they become available for other funds if there is flooding in the area. It's not just the 150. And we're just looking at river catchment work. We're not looking at anything else. Earlier, we'd had reports that were looking at, was it $60 million for doing proper flood work and protection? And, there was a huge funding potential there, but this is just a very small amount. So, Janine, we're essentially looking at $30,000 coming from general rate. That's from ratepayers in Hamilton City and everywhere else. Is that right?
The 150,
Yeah.
50,000.
Yeah, 45. Yeah. Okay. So when we're going out for consultation with the people in Wharekawa about this, because they at the meeting were interested in it, but they could still choose not to go with that. But I just hope that we explain it better than what we've done so far, in the way it's interpreted, that there is 30% coming from a general rate from all of across the region. And the other question is, do we have to ask everyone in the region if they want to fund that 30%?
We do.
Oh, hang on, I just need to get her a mic. So the speaking order is Councillor Cookson, Councillor Hughes, and Councillor Smith after.
So the intent is that we included in our consultation document, but the first question is, do you live in the area? And then I'm expecting that there's been a lot of engagement, obviously, with that community anyway, but I would expect over that consultation period that we'll still have staff in there encouraging submissions through that process. But so there is an opportunity for other ratepayers to comment on it as well, but we'll be able to differentiate between those paying the targeted rate and everyone else.
Councillor Cookson.
I support the 70-30 after being up there with the public and understanding their needs. Like their thing is that they would just like to see their outlets be clean and be open of debris so they have as little amount of flooding possible to their properties. So, and this is just a start. In 3 years' time, as Jen just said, they may require a better level of service, and when they want that, they'll have to pay for it, just like everybody else does. So, yeah, consult and go through it all. And they actually, they contribute to everybody else's general rate, but they don't actually get any service at all at the moment. So that's why they need to come in, and this needs to be implemented. So they're an equal community with everybody else in the region. So I think it's really important this happens and gets done and move on. And then in the future we'll find out what they really want. They just got to feel their way to start off with, because it's totally new to them. They haven't had anything here since 2010. So I welcome it and get on with it. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
I just want to reflect back to the workshops we had on this, and I thought it was very clear to those who are on the committee that any rates that were going to be targeted should be targeted 100%. That was a condition that we agreed to this in the first place. Correct or not? Anyway, this is the tip of the iceberg as far as I'm concerned. The projects that were being talked about, we're talking millions of dollars. And if we approve this one, and I'm not saying we shouldn't cap it at 150 or whatever the figure is, but that's it. Because what we'll see next coming down the pipeline is full restoration and rebuilding of whatever they put forward. And I've heard different numbers, certainly hasn't been discussed today. But to me, this is absolutely limited to the rivers and what we do there and nothing else. Otherwise, we're just buying ourselves a real battle.
Clarification, or because there's others before you. Do you want to?
It is limited to just the river management at this
Sorry,
stage. There are other parts of the community plan which can come back for further consultation in future, but this is just one piece.
Did you have a point of clarification for Councillor Hughes?
Well, I was just I've missed something, because we fund river management for the whole region exactly the same way now. So why should we treat these people any different?
Stu, when it was presented initially, we were talking 60 million or something, because it's a lot more than river management. The expectations were a lot more. And Jen and Ben are on the committee. I'm not on the committee, but they can explain.
Look, I haven't been involved, but I do remember when I first got on this council, they were demanding work, service, a level of service, but they didn't want to pay for it. So I'm really impressed that we've finally got to a point where they've accepted they've got to pay a bit. And to me, it just feels like exactly, I mean, we do it in Marakopa and the Waipa and the King Country as well, the West Coast zone. So we've got to treat them the same, but.
I can clarify.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just concerned that we're not going to get lumbered with the bigger project.
Yeah.
Because that is not fair on anybody, any other ratepayers. That's their problem.
Yeah, I understand. And if I can clarify, I can understand what you're talking about, because when it was presented to this council, it was the whole community plan for adoption, and that has a lot of segments in it, as Ben has raised almost every meeting, which is good. But this is the one little piece, and because we are asking for a rate for this piece, we're applying the policy of a similar ratio as we always do for river work. when another piece comes down the track as we work through the actions in the community plan over the years, the policy of how we treat, say, capital works may well be targeted
It would
rate
need a new
100%,
it would
whatever
need a
it
new-
might be.
It would need a new policy.
Yeah, but we'd make a new target rate or a new policy for that. So this is very limited, just to assuage Councillor Hughes' concern, to just river management, and we're just treating them the same as Councillor Cookson said to everybody else. It is limited.
All right, I've got Councillor Smith and then Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Thank you. My point was practically covered when Janine outlined that it would be consultation with the whole community because of the general rate component. We cannot go in isolation to Wharekawa alone. But just on the issues that have been raised subsequent to me wanting to make that point, I believe in equity, and Wharekawa Coast has been late to the table. But I do remember and was involved in the amalgamation issues when Franklin was broken up between 3 councils. The issue here is that we've got to treat them the same as we do the rest of the region. So to do otherwise is inequitable, and I think it would be quite subject to challenge should they wish to do that. And I think on that basis they would be successful. They're not wishing to preempt that. So I think we've got to go with what's planned. Thank you.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, simply to say that from the meeting we went to, there was some people who didn't agree with the rate, and it's possible they may vote not to accept it. So if this is $150,000, the 60 million, which is also related to Port Waikato work and other work, again, you're going to have to get the locals to agree to pay at least 70% before anything moves forward. So it'll be an uphill battle for the bigger costs.
All right, we've thrashed that one out, I think.
I think so, yes. Any other key points?
Is there more you're going to present? Or you?
Just had a few slides, Madam Chair, but I'm happy just to roll through, Dave, just to the next steps. Just to cover. So yes, there has been quite a lot of pre-engagement with the community. So we will reconnect with them after if this gets supported today, we will go back out and make sure that we are making that community fully aware, including the general rate component, around the timings of the annual plan and how they might want to consult. So that will be, and that will include obviously our stakeholders. And the other thing I just want to reiterate is that there is a wider, the $60 million that's been talked about is part of that wider plan. We are talking quite a bespoke part of our agreement to provide a river and catchment service to this community. So yeah, I think, and there's one more slide, I think, Dave, just to wrap it up, and I'll leave it there, Madam Chair, and happy to take any more questions.
Yeah, so wrapping up comments was just thank you so much for those who were involved in bringing this forward and schedule to become live on the 1st of July, should it all go positive. I think the report, other than us getting our heads around the 70-30 piece, really reflects the intention of what came out of the last few conversations between Councillor Mard, Dunbar-Smith, myself and Councillor Cookson. I have asked for feedback from the Joint Working Party since Friday, which is short notice, but they haven't given me any feedback on this. I'm going to go with that they're pretty happy with this too because it's aligning. And I look forward to feedback from the community. I would like to signal that, and I think I have before, it would be great if part of the consultation we could go to Kaiaua.
Yes, yes, and can I just add, I think there's been the request in terms of hearings of finding a location as close as practical, so that we can actually do hearings locally as well.
Cool. And I'll bring a lot of scrutiny to how we communicate it because it's new and all of that when the time comes. But otherwise, really happy to move the suggested recommendation and just keep this one moving.
Second that.
Do you want to do it separate or do you want to?
Well,
we're
as I understand, we kind of went through item 7.1 and then jumped ahead to 7.5 to go through it in detail. So if you'd like to move it, we can move it now, or we can wait till later. But now it's fresh in our minds. I just thought, let's get it done. Up to how democracy advises.
Happy to wait.
Happy to wait.
It's fine. Yeah.
Great. All right.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, just a really brief comment. So just echoing what Jennifer's just said, and thanks to everybody that's been involved in this process. I know it's gone on for quite a while, and also to Kaiaua and previous councillors that have been involved in the past. But just one thing around the consultation document, I think we need to make it very clear that this is dropped out of that Wharekawa 2120 project, so that everyone is aware here and it goes out and we clarify around that consultation, those figures. Thank you.
All right. What next?
So that concludes this flood protection and control works group of activities. And now we move on to integrated catchment management, which is our catchment management, biosecurity, biodiversity, and work that we do in the CMA. So I just reference page 22 in the agenda, which provides you with a summary of this particular activity, and also notes some of the planned budget changes that are coming through as part of the long-term plan agreement, particularly in the biosecurity and biodiversity space. And there are another couple of points there noted from paragraph 72 through to 76. There is obviously a fairly substantive discussion to come on the particular business case on paragraph 77. So maybe, Madam Chair, maybe pause there, see if there are any general questions around this particular group of activities before moving on to that.
No.
All right, so moving to paragraph 77, and you'll see that there is a summary being provided of a business case that has been submitted for your consideration, which relates to the management of Capicula. This is a continuation from the conversation we had as council before Christmas, and just to reinforce that this is about council doing what it needs to do to meet the requirements of the controlled area notice, and the fact that Capicula in the Waikato River has been designated an unwanted organism. So in pre-Christmas, we discussed the capital budget requirement and noted some extra equipment that's needed to make sure that we meet the check, clean, dry requirements that are imposed on a number of work areas that we undertake in the Waikato River. This particular aspect is summarised in the middle of page 23. There's a range of activities that have been noted, and this is primarily around making sure that I'm able to provide you with the assurance that what we expect to be happening is happening. This is a new space, and there will be new expectations placed on both our staff and contractors to ensure that we are managing the risk of spreading Capicula appropriately. What you'll also see there of the 170,000 annual budget that's been requested, a majority of it is actually around contract compliance. And that's in relation to the fact that we do expect contractors to do more in this space. But conversely, we expect that we will be charged for that because there will be more requirements placed on those particular contracts over and above what's been delivered already. So as you can see there, there's some general provisions for this operational budget, but then also the increasing costs to undertake our work and the contractor work that we undertake across a number of activities in the Waikato River. So this is an extension on the work that was brought to you as part of the long-term plan, where we did have a focus on freshwater and marine biosecurity. Both of those particular elements, we focused on establishing those programs in the general areas that we needed to make improvements on as a council. This takes things, I guess, a step further and provides a particular focus on Capicula and the work that we need to do operationally to support or to do the right thing in the check, clean, dry space.
The detailed business case in December because it's very high level and it didn't actually give us the breakdown on how we were going to spend the 414,000, so that came at last minute. This 170 is clearer at least, but where I have confusion is what the contractor compliance costs are. Firstly, are contractors not liable under the terms of the Biosecurity Act and cleaning their gear? And why do we need to spend 133,000 paying them to do that?
Yep. So the costs of them, that you're absolutely right, they're required to meet the requirements of the Biosecurity Act and same things that we need to meet as a council. What that does mean is that if we engage them to do a piece of work, that piece of work will involve more. So say, for example, it may involve the additional equipment that we discussed before Christmas. It may involve the standing down of machinery for a period of time to meet the check, clean, dry requirements. And all of those extra requirements come with cost. That if we are requesting that they undertake that work and meet those requirements, then that naturally does come as a cost to council.
That doesn't, I don't really get that personally. It seems to me you just write a contract and they are obliged to, we should be negotiating with them that this idea that we're having to provide additional labour for boat cleaning doesn't seem real to me. My question is, in the business case on page whatever it is, page 82, it also in there had additional contract work for 60,000 a year for 3 years. Is that not now being required? An additional personnel contractor. Page 82.
So that is included in the 170,000. So the overall request is for 170,000. And then the 60,000 is wrapped up into that.
So you're going to hire someone for 60,000. That's not been explained clearly. It's again, this business case, I really like to see a clear business case that sets out where everything is. There's no indication here you're hiring someone for 60,000 to do this work, to monitor.
So there's a breakdown provided on page 23 of the agenda, which notes the different areas where we will be requiring contractors to undertake that work. So that's the nature of the engagement that's referred to there.
So is the contractor going to do the education and training for 12,000?
We will be engaging contractors to undertake that work, yes.
Contractors or a contractor?
That remains to be seen. We'll obviously get the right person for the right job.
And they're going to do the project management for 20,000?
Yes.
And the auditing, so that's 32,000.
Yep. And then also built into the contract compliance aspect as well, because there will be different elements.
So there's another 28,000 going to them.
Yep.
And are they going to be doing the boat cleaning? I mean, what is this contractor going to do?
I guess what it reinforces that, I mean, so the business case has been put together to give you an idea of what we're trying to achieve in this particular space and the resources that we believe are necessary. We will be going through detailed project planning subject to approval of the business case to implement what's agreed by council, what's approved by council. The most detailed breakdown that we have currently is provided for you in the document.
Yeah, I just find this very woolly, and it also the 133,000 is an estimate only. So, I mean, we're actually allowing the contractors to come back and renegotiate with us because they have to clean their boats down.
So not so much renegotiation. So obviously we'll be entering contracts as they become necessary. At that point in time, we negotiate with contractors to deliver a service to meet certain outcomes, and part of those outcomes will be compliance with the check, clean, dry requirements. At that point in time, through our normal procurement rules, we would negotiate a contract to deliver certain outcomes.
I mean, I don't object to looking after golden clams and dealing this work. What I object to is a business case that doesn't clearly set out things easily, and I find this still confusing. It didn't really jump out to me that there was a $60,000 contractor coming in here. So that's my concern.
If I can maybe just help, it's very. I just want to see where there's not any clarity. It's very clear that there's 170K per year on 3 years. Within that, 60K is for contracted services to help provide this, and the remainder will be for operational matters. Is there something that's not clear?
Well, it wasn't clear that there was a $60,000 contractor there until it wasn't set out on page 23. It was only when you go back to the overview, the OPEX looks different than what the additional person.
Can I just note, we had this whole conversation the last time we talked about the same matter. You asked the same questions and the answers were provided about the contracting and everything, Ben. So this is either an offline conversation for you, because I don't need to sit through it again. Kia ora.
Tipper, I actually want to know what money's being spent on. I think that's what the ratepayers want to know. So
And I agree, and you asked this level of detailed questionings at the last time round on this particular item with the clam. The only reason it costs this much the first time, it's the first time we're trying to manage it. But I'm just encouraging you that if there's a level of information not thinged here, please go and spend time with the staff member, because you're taking up the same amount of time again a second time. And I've written down your questions from last time. They're the same ones, Ben. So I'm frustrated with you. I want you to have the right answers, but I don't know that this is the best way to get them. Kia ora.
last time the questions were around the 414,000. Anyway, I've asked my questions, so others may have some.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Marr.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And Tipper, you're going to be really disappointed now because I've got the same concerns as Ben, and these questions weren't answered in that time, and we were waiting on this business case to come back to us. So what I would add, though, is how many have read the controlled area notice of councillors here? 3, possibly 4. 7 pages. That's it. The compliance requirements are already known. It's not a dark space. Education, 12K at $100 an hour. That's 120 hours. I just don't see the justification for it. We were told that it's not contingent. The 410,000 is not contingent on this 170 going forward for the next 3 years. It is. Ben's dead right. The items down there. This process here is really, really simple. Really simple. And I have a real frustration that we're making such a big deal out of it. And I don't support the business case. Thank you.
Sir Clarkson.
Yeah, thank you. The CE largely answered already when he gave that explanation, what I was trying to get my head around, which was it's the combination of it's not just contractors. We're talking about the operation of the regional council. And the last thing we want to be doing is being the agent that caused the spread to a new sub-catchment. And so my view on this is that while on paper it looks fairly simple, getting the level of compliance needed, both within the staff and within contractors, is another matter. And that's why I'm supportive of this proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions. I want to know where the extra $100,000 that we approved last year is included in here. Because as I don't see it being taken out of the budget, and it's mentioned in here, but it's not accounted for in the business case. So on that basis, I support Councillor Marr and Councillor Dunbar-Smith. The other thing, I did a little bit of research on Wharekawa, and it's actually an edible product. It's quite a delicacy in some places around.
I wouldn't leave that on the record that we are advising people to do that. People have been advised the exact opposite.
There was a suggestion that it may not actually survive in our environment because of that. So, I agree we shouldn't be responsible for spreading it. We cannot stop what happens in the water. Water flows down. We know what's going to happen. The spore's going to get spread north. That's not our issue. We can't stop it. Yes, I do agree that we can stop transfer from one catchment to another. That shouldn't be allowed.
And that mainly is the intent of this, isn't it? To stop the spread to other.
Correct.
So
ultimately, this is to manage the risk to council that our activities will be spreading this. I would note that the controlled area notice is one particular aspect of this. We also, because Cubicula has been defined as an unwanted organism, that comes with a number of other requirements, much broader than the controlled area notice, which has a geographic limit. So we do need to be cognizant of that as well.
All right. Councillor Mahuta, I see your hand up again. Did you want to make another comment? Or was that the hand from last time?
Apologies, that was the hand from last time.
Okay. Kia ora. Councillor Smith.
I had second thoughts as to whether it's on topic or not, but the 60,000 for a staff member. So that means there's what, 110,000 for operational costs. And that left me pondering with a question that you can tell me we can deal with later if you like. But I just wonder how much of that 110,000 is burden rate. And therefore, that leads to another question. How many staff have we increased in the ICM space over the last 10 years? And does that explain why the burden rate and therefore the targeted rates have gone up so much? So blue sky thinking, but maybe it's a question for some other day or whatever, but I just am left wondering, because I'm always seeking to bring that cost down to the targeted rate payer. So whether it's discussed now or later, but I'm happy to bring it up offline if it need be. It's just something that has popped into my mind.
Possibly I just confirm for this particular subject matter, we're dealing with contracted services, not an additional staff member.
Excuse me, I've got Councillor Dunbar Smith and Councillor Marr, are you, is an addition? Okay, Councillor Dunbar Smith.
Oh, it's just in relation to what Noel was saying. If we are looking after Waikato Regional Council activities, why have we not chosen to have this as a fixed term staff member for 3 years, which is about the rate that we pay for a scheme officer? Why are we going for a contractor or contractors?
So as you can see from the breakdown of work, it's the work is spread over 3 years and it doesn't work up to even a fixed term rate. So we believe that the best approach for delivering this is through contracted services as opposed to a fixed term staff member. It would only be a part-time staff member.
Okay.
Councillor Marr.
Thank you. Greg, are the measures you've put in place since the last funding round with the extra gear and that sort of thing working? Treatment.
Good question. I don't have an update for you in terms of implementation of that. Staff working through it at the moment in terms of purchasing of the additional equipment to get on with the work. There is quite a range of river work that is obviously pending our vessel as well, which will be coming. But the other work is currently underway to give effect to Council's decision in December.
Just noting how simple some of the treatment processes are. I have been speaking to Gavin Miller, who's the manager of Aquatic Pest Management with Biosecurity New Zealand. He's very happy that the space Waikato Regional Council is in and in that space. But just confirming, we have applied for the Section 52 permits to work in the controlled areas.
I don't have an answer for that. I can go away and get that for you, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Nicol.
Thank you. I understand we stopped doing certain monitoring in order to limit the risk until all of this budget stuff is worked out. Has that monitoring been able to resume already in the majority of the stuff we cancelled for a while or paused, I suppose, or with that previous decision, or is this still contingent on this? Because I was a little bit disappointed that we stopped doing something without learning that we'd stopped doing something. But how are we tracking with
So that kind of relates to the question from the previous councillor, from
Yes.
Councillor Marr. The work is underway to get that work up and going again with the new budget that was approved by council in December. And that's where the
and
things
is
currently
there
at.
is this contingent?
No, I mean what we've got here is
Are we
on
back
work
to full strength even without this?
So this is really about providing assurance to council that what we're expecting to get done in regards to check, clean and dry is actually getting done, so that I can have the assurance and I can provide you with the assurance that that risk has been appropriately managed. What is contingent on this budget is the additional contractor costs that have been identified here over and above the capital costs.
Thank you. Now I've spent a lot of time on it considering the value, so I've got nothing further at this stage.
We have spent, excuse me, a bit of time on this. So if we can move it along, that would be great. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I still want to know, are we spending 270,000 a year or 170,000? 170. Like 100,000 has just disappeared into thin air.
So in response to that, so we, if you recall, as part of the long-term plan, there was a business case put forward which included freshwater biosecurity. That was to focus on the overall program. Cubicular is just one incursion or issue that we need to deal with in the freshwater biosecurity space. So the budget that was approved by council, which included a new staff member, is also underway at the moment. That is looking at the broader biosecurity freshwater program, which is in addition to these requirements that are operational upon us.
Yeah, well, that's different to my recollection of events, but if that's the case, thanks.
Good. All right. Where are we at? That's, so we've finished our discussion on this business case. There was nothing else that anybody needed points of clarification or anything on? No. Okay, so the next, just gauging with counselors, our next section is the public transport bit. I do know lunch is here, so you want to take lunch now, or do you want to start getting, do you want to get into anything first, or lunch? All right. Okay. So we will adjourn the meeting at 12:33. We will be back here at 1 p.m. sharp.